We all listen close, dancing to the rhythm, feel the music stows. Echoes of laughter in this techno dream, moving through the night, a vibrant stream. We dance all night. In the flashing light, in the city where the lights never fade, Donny speaks out loud, setting the parade. Hearts feeling free, liberated and true. Every word he says, refreshing like the dew. Feel the bass drop, they take control. Donny's voice guiding deep in our soul. Hands up, we'll follow where he wants to go. Light up the night with a radiant glow. Donny chill sister, we all listen close. Dancing to the rhythm, feel the music stows. Echoes of laughter in this techno dream, moving through the night, a vibrant stream. We dance all night. In the flashing light.
Okay, well, that song just ended fucking suddenly out of nowhere. Hey guys, I figured out AI music, so I'm going to start doing that more often. So, hey everybody, today is Saturday, April the 5th. It's about 4:45 in the PM. So I'll be seeing y'alls later tonight in the chat room. I'll be in the chat because it's going to be premiered. This is going to be a pre-record because I have to show K-pop clips. And any show where I show K-pop clips, it's got to be pre-recorded because I don't want YouTube cutting that shit off live. That sucks. I've had that happen several times now. And we don't need that in our lives. So what's up, everybody? How's it going? So today's episode is called Buddhism, Tulpas, and K-pop, a grand theory of the paranormal. Now, you guys may know me from a whole bunch of paranormal shows that we've done together, me and the group, The Island of Misfit Toys. You guys have either participated in the shows yourselves or been in the chat and hung out with us. But yeah, you've been there with me and my friends while we talked a lot about the paranormal and the supernatural. And yeah, at the end of the day, I want to talk about K-pop, but the reason why I want to talk about K-pop is because it offers up a lot of insights into the paranormal that I feel like a lot of our Western audiences are missing, especially in these daily conversations that we have. So that is the point of today's episode, is for the truth to come out, or at least my truth, my theory on the paranormal and how it works and what it's about. And the best medium for that truth to be conveyed, I feel like, has been K-pop. And tonight I will be demonstrating to you. So, when I talk about the grand theory, right? You know how like they have like the grand theory in physics, you know? You've got the general theory of relativity, right? You got Newtonian physics. You've got everything Einstein is known for, you know, general relativity, special relativity, right? All of that is physics that describes like the very big galaxies and planets and stars and how they interact with one another through the forces of gravity. And then you have quantum theory, right? The science of the very small, quantum physics, studying things like protons and neutrons, how atoms are held together, how they're structured. You go into smaller particles like quarks and gluons and neutrinos, right? That's quantum physics, the science of the very small. And the problem is those two theories, while they are both like very valid in their own rights, because science has based a lot of predictions and models based off those two theories by themselves don't match each other, even though they're both valid. So, for close to a century, well, over a century now, science has been looking for the grand theory, right? How relativity and quantum physics they fit into each other. How the very big and the very small they all occupy the same universe. And it's been the holy grail of science ever since. For nearly 100 years when I think about it now. That's the holy grail. So just like with physics, the paranormal, as we have all talked about, has its own gaps in its theories. It's all contradictory theories. Both seem valid and legit in their own right, but a lot of things don't seem to line up. That's the thing that they're looking for, other than a disclosure in the paranormal world. It's a grand unified theory. How does this whole thing work? What is the truth behind it? Where are the machinations and the mechanisms? You know, what are the rules, right? That is what we're going to explore today, and that's going to be the theory I'm going to lay out. Now, you may or may not agree with this theory. If you don't agree, it's totally fine. It's just my own theory. Everyone's entitled to their own. But I feel like my theory is unique enough to offer up out there, you know, because in our audiences, it's mostly, people born into Western culture, America, Canada, Europe, people who came up under the Judeo-Christian belief system, which is fine and cool and all dandy, right? Most of my friends and most of you guys are like that. But I came into this field, I guess you want to put it that way, to try to represent like the more Asian, Eastern, maybe Buddhist point of view, to try to offer up a little extra, I guess, color in the mosaic of paranormal theory. So, I am going to start with a little concept here. Um, Actually, I forget the first picture that I wanted to start on. I forgot to fucking load, 'cause I'm a moron. Okay. So, the concept that I wanted to talk about comes from Vajrayana Buddhism. Vajrayana Buddhism is a branch of Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana is like more the Asian, like Eastern, like Chinese, Tibetan, that form of Buddhism. That's Mahayana. It's like the best way to put it is, how Christianity's got like Catholics and Protestants. They're major branches of Buddhism as well. Mahayana is one of the biggest ones. And within Mahayana Buddhism, there's Vajrayana Buddhism, which is kind of like the esoteric stuff, the secret sauce, if you will. They got esoteric Christianity, right? That came about way after Christianity was first started, like that Da Vinci Code shit and that motherfucking Rosicrucian stuff and like Knights Templars and all of that shit, right? A lot of that stuff came about in medieval times. Vajrayana is like the Buddhist equivalent of that. It's like that secret sauce tantric Buddhism that came about in like India in like the Middle Ages, way after Buddhism started. Because Buddhism started like, let's see, when was Buddha born? By the time Buddha was born, that was like around the same time like the Persians and the Spartans were fighting at Thermopylae. Around that time. So Vajrayana Buddhism came out in the ADs. Came out like, it was like a little bit before 1000 AD, but it was like the Middle Ages for India. But this came about way later, and it's like the esoteric stuff. It's otherwise known as Tantric Buddhism. And no, do not get it confused. Tantric does not mean that they're just fucking or having sex or whatever, right? That's a misconception. Tantric just means esoteric. Yeah, there is one branch or one school where they do practice like sexual shit, but it's not nearly as fun as people would think. It doesn't sound very appealing, so don't be trying to get in on tantric Buddhism just if you're trying to, just get your dick wet, because it's not good. basically the idea of all that sexual stuff in like esoteric Buddhism is basically you're supposed to like do this sexual stuff before you climax, and then before you climax, you're supposed to stop. It's one of the ideas of the cessation of desires, right? You're supposed to basically have sex until you are about to bust that nut, and then you stop, and then you walk away. Doesn't sound very appealing. Not as attractive if you think of it that way. So, but that again, that's just one tiny little like branch or school of esoteric Buddhism. It's very unfair to categorize all esoteric Buddhism. Not to say that I'm a champion of it or anything, but it's just not very accurate to lump that all in there with like all the weird sexual stuff, because that's one specific school and it's not even mainstream even within the esoteric schools of Buddhism. So that's a huge misconception. Um, so within Vajrayana Buddhism and other forms of Buddhism, there's a concept known as the Trikaya. Trikaya means three bodies. The three main bodies of Buddhism. It's people want to equate it to the Trinity in Christianity, but not really, because they're more general. The Trinity is more like conscious beings, right? Like God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus. Those are conscious beings. The Trikaya is more like the three aspects of reality. They're not like beings. It's more like the the three layers of like the universe is the way to put it. So, what is the Trikaya? The first one is the Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya, it says ultimate reality or truth. Basically, Dharma is, by the way, Kaya means body. And Dharma is like the Dharma body. Dharma is basically everything in the universe and reality. For those of you who are into like Western esoteric thinking or New Age thinking, think of like everything that would be recorded in the Akashic records. That's basically Dharma. So Dharmakaya is the totality of everything in the universe and in reality, right? Not just our reality, but like on the spiritual world and the physical realm, everything, right? That's the Dharmakaya. So Sambhogakaya, that's the enjoyment for bliss, the body of the divine incarnation of Buddha. It's basically the enjoyment body. It's hard to put into, I guess it's hard for me to explain because I'm such a scrub at this. But I would like to think of this one as like the spiritual realm, the divine realm. Now, before the Dharmakaya is like the totality of reality in the universe. Sambhogakaya is more like the spirit world and all the conscious divine beings, and they're just like residing in the spirit world, enjoying everything, just kind of being all divine and formless and without time and without limit. But they're like individual beings, you know. Nirmanakaya is what I want to focus on. That is, hold on, where's the picture here? Nirmanakaya is the spiritual world manifesting in the material world and vice versa. Things in the material world influencing things in the spiritual world bleeding over into the material world. So if you guys know of the story of Siddhartha, right? About 500 AD BC, Siddhartha, an Indian prince, was born. Basically, the Buddha manifested on earth as an Indian prince, and that was his Nirmanakaya body. That's when he went from the spirit world and manifested into the real world or the physical world as an actual baby that was born, right? Manifestation from the spiritual into the physical, regardless of like the manner of how it manifests, that's Nirmanakaya. So Siddhartha Gautama, the physical person, was a Nirmanakaya manifestation of the Buddha, all right? Nirmanakaya is key, and that's the key portion of my theory here, because again, Nirmanakaya is The spiritual world manifesting itself in the material world. And that is what I like to talk about in terms of paranormal phenomena. Because if you think about what paranormal phenomena, what it really is, at its very essence, it's the spiritual other side, right? The Sambhogakaya world bleeding over into our physical reality, manifesting itself for it to be perceivable by us because we are living in this physical material world. And through the concept of Nirmanakaya, we get to understand that that's what the paranormal phenomena really is. Spiritual bleeding over into the material. And I think one of the best ways to put it, or the best people to exemplify that, is a K-pop girl group known as New Jeans. Now on the show, I've shown several K-pop girl groups. I've shown so far XG with Jason. And with Jason, we also went over aespa. But today with me and you, the audience, I am going to present to you this K-pop group known as New Jeans. Now, New Jeans, they're not my personal favorite K-pop group or girl group. I don't think they're particularly the most talented, musically or, dance or performance-wise. But I feel like what New Jeans does that stands out is that their videos are a lot more cerebral than you might give it credit for upon first viewing. These girls are particularly young. They can be quite ditzy as they come off. But when you watch their videos, it's a lot of bubblegum shit. But then you watch it again and you're like, yo, there's some weird hidden messages in here. There's some like real cerebral shit going on. And then you watch it again deeper and deeper and you're like, oh my God, there's some deep hidden, like profound lessons steeped in like Buddhist thought and Vajrayana theology. And it's all coming out in this little bubblegum girl, K-pop girl group video. And that shit, like, yeah, it requires several viewings. Because I think a lot of what they do is what they capture the essence of the Nirmanakaya. Again, the veil between the spiritual world and the physical world, what people like to call tulpas, all right? Thought forms. Now, a lot of what we know about tulpas originated from Vajrayana Buddhism, specifically Tibetan Buddhism. But it's, again, Tibetan Buddhism is actually a more recent form of Buddhism than people realize. And a lot of it is tied into a lot of their spiritual teachings. You have to keep in mind one thing about Buddhism, right? It's very much like Christianity and Islam. It's one of those religions that kind of spread out throughout the world through basically same idea with Christianity. You had missionaries going from country to country, location to location, and they were spreading it. It was a little bit different, however, from Christianity in that Buddhism is not a deistic religion. There's no specific God that you are worshiping in the same way you would worship like the God of Judeo-Christian religions, someone like Jesus or Muhammad. Well, I mean, most Muslims will say they don't technically worship Muhammad, but they kind of do. There's no deistic aspect of Buddhism. Like a lot of people, like casually might believe that people worship Buddha, but that's not really the case, or at least it's not supposed to be. Buddha is a spiritual state that you're supposed to strive for. And then the first Buddha, like Siddhartha Gautama, he was like the first one to pull it off, but it's more of an actual state. And then there have been others, but it's it's like that. So as they spread through other countries, Buddhism was able to adopt the spiritual, mystic, and folklore beliefs of the local people because it didn't really step on the toes of like what they believed, who like the identity of like ancient gods or ancestral spirits. Like that was completely compatible with Buddhism because again, Buddhism was really more of a philosophy. It was more about the cessation of desire through meditation and through practice. It didn't really focus too much on the supernatural per se, or at least what it would do is it would be brought to a place like Tibet, and the Tibetans they would incorporate that Buddhist philosophy into their own like primordial prehistoric teachings and folklore on like nature spirits, like the things that were already there in place, and it would just mix, and then it would turn into its own version of Buddhism. I mean, you see the same phenomena happening with Christianity, um, especially things like Santa Muerte and Santeria. Like a lot of it is like folk culture mixing in with Christianity. Think of Tibetan Buddhism in a lot of the same way, and that's where you get things like Vajrayana Buddhism coming from, right? So a lot of the like the ancient gods that you see, a lot of it's like just local lore being attached to like Buddhist teachings that have been brought in. Because again, Buddhism doesn't really have like gods per se. It's again really more of a philosophy. So so around the turn of the 20th century, about the late 1800s, early 1900s, um, Tibetan Buddhism became very posh with like the spiritualists. And one of these days, I do plan on doing an episode on the history of spiritualism in America. But there were a couple people who encountered Tibetan Buddhism around the turn of the century. You had this lady, Alexandra David Neal. That's her on the left as a teenager. Her on the right, she's dressed up in like Tibetan Buddhism garb. I know. Fucking cultural appropriation much. So she was one of the first people to introduce the idea of like tulpas. This was like in 1905. She actually went to Tibet and like studied with the monks, and she, according to her account, was claimed to actually have witnessed a monk who was like highly advanced meditating and actually manifesting a tulpa. Um, this guy here, Walter Evans Wentz, he was another guy. This guy was the one who translated the Tibetan Book of the Dead for the first time into like Western languages for Western consumption. The idea of tulpas that they introduced, right? And he was the one who coined the term thought forms, was that through meditation and I guess psychic discipline, you can manifest things through the Nirmanakaya. So you can create like spiritual beings and spiritual entities. Although, in my opinion, the teachings of Nirmanakaya really show it as more of a two-way street. So, like using your own psychic discipline to form tulpas, that's the physical, that's me being a physical person, manifesting something in the spiritual world. And then if I'm out in like a haunted location and I see like a ghost or a Bigfoot or something, that's the spiritual world manifesting itself to me as a physical person. It's a two-way street. These people kind of introduced it, kind of like their own version of it, but Nirmanakaya is a little broader than that. And that is what I want to talk about that will be illustrated by this group, New Genes. Now, some of you guys may be familiar with Edgar Cayce. And Edgar Cayce, in a lot of his readings and in his words, you know, one of his readings, they asked him like what the spiritual world was like. What was the spirit realm like? What was it like on the other side of the veil? Like if we were to see the other side of the veil, what would it look like? And I found this question to be very interesting. And I found Edgar Cayce's response to be particularly interesting, which I do feel is relevant to the concept of Nirmanakaya and the concept of tulpas. Basically, Edgar Cayce said that this veil that we talk about, you know, the spiritual world, and then there's the veil separating that with the physical world. The spiritual world, if we were on the other side of that veil, would look very much like our own world. in that it is our subjective reality, right? Because there's two types of reality that we live in this world. There's the objective reality, right on the right. You have objective science, objective materialism, right? The world of the skeptic, the world of the atheist, the world of the, oh, there's no proof that Bigfoot exists, therefore Bigfoot doesn't exist. Or there's nothing in science that supports a bipedal canid, so Dogman does not exist. Objective materialism. But then there's the subjective, the solipsistic worldview, where basically this reality is my own point of view, my own perceptions, my own experiences. I was born August 24th, 1980. On August 24th, 1980, that is when the universe began. Because I'm going by my own solipsistic worldview. And according to my own solipsistic worldview, the universe will end on the day that I die. And then I cross into the spiritual realm for good. That is the balance that we play. That is the game, right? The perceptual game that we are running in here. The objective materialistic worldview and then the solipsistic subjective worldview. Edgar Cayce, when they asked him what was on the other side of the veil, he said it is just the solipsistic worldview. It is your own personal perceptions, experiences, thoughts, memories, emotions, but no space and no time. That's what he described it as. That's what it looks like on the other side. Now, you might be thinking, how does that work? A few years back, when I was still living in Korea, I had a buddy of mine, this Australian dude, who during his vacation actually went over to Peru to partake in ayahuasca. You know, this guy was like, he was a coworker of mine. You know, he was very professional. He had a wife and kids. He had a pretty stable corporate job. We worked together. That's how we knew each other. But for a vacation, he wanted to strike an item off his bucket list. He wanted to go to Peru and try out ayahuasca. So he did. He joined an ayahuasca retreat, got together with some shamans. He said it was a fantastic time. We got together afterwards. He told me all about it. And my first question obviously was like, dude, what happened? What did you experience when you tried ayahuasca? And this guy, he described his experience to me, which, you know, I'm never going to forget. He basically said that when he was in the throes of his ayahuasca trip, his first memory of like the actual trip itself was that he suddenly found himself back in his kindergarten class. He was back to like 6 years old. And he said it was the most vivid thing. Like he was remembering things that he had no way of remembering as an adult. Like he was remembering all the little decorations, details of the room, specific details about all the kids in the room. And he said this was more than just a dream or a memory. He said it was like he was time traveling. It felt like that. And he was in shock because, you know, he was like, oh my God, it's like such and such years ago. I'm back in kindergarten. I'm only 6 years old. And he was seeing, it was as if he was just back in time. More vivid than any dream or memory could hope for. Like he was remembering, like he was seeing like very specific things, details, like papers hung up on the, like drawings of kids hung up on the walls, the writing on the board, everything. And then he was transported to another memory when he was 8 years old. Same thing, right? Playing sports with his friends. He was able to experience everything, every sound, every smell. He was transported again like a few more years in the future. It was like a school dance in middle school, dancing with this girl he had a crush on. And he was jumping from point to point in his life as if it was like a time jump until he finally got to the present. And he told me that the message he got from whatever ayahuasca spirit was that he had generally done well in his life. You know, he was a successful guy, married a great wife, had great kids, had a good job, living a good life in Korea. And the ayahuasca spirit was just giving him a review of his life, and it was basically saying to him, yeah, you did a good job. So when Edgar Cayce describes the other side of the veil as basically it's our subjective worldview, our solipsistic point of view, without the constraints of space and time, I think back on my buddy Mark's experience with ayahuasca. That's subjective mentality. And it makes sense to me. Now, the reason why I bring this up with regards to the paranormal is because I believe that what the paranormal really is, it is the Nirmanakaya. It is the spiritual world breaking into our physical world by using our subjective point of view, presenting itself to our subjective point of view, because we, as the perceivers, are the focal point. We are the actual portal for which a spiritual thing can break into this physical world, and vice versa. Hence the concept of Tulpas, introduced by these spiritualists back in the early 20th century. And I think this video that I'm about to show you is a good illustration of that. So I want to watch this together with you guys. We're going to go through it scene by scene, and we're going to go over the concepts. And I want you guys to tell me what you think. It's called New Jeans. But that's the name of the group also. Okay. And I'm going to make sure to keep the captions are on. Okay. Here we go.
제가 뭔가 체력적으로 여행을 키워줘야 여행.
So this video starts off, these girls, these, young, cute, ditzy little girls, they're basically debating like the question, what would you do if you could have any superpower? So pay attention to what they're actually saying.
제가 뭔가 체력적으로
Physically, I want to.
여행을 키워줘야 여행. But that's kind of boring. So
말 그대로 진짜 슈퍼파워인데
다른 사람한테 힘과 파워를 줄 수 있는.
나 물건 크기를 바뀌.
I want to be able to change the size of things. Talk to plants.
Know what they think.
많은 슈퍼파워?
No, chocolate's better.
네, 그냥 사줄게.
She's just like, what? You just want to make what? Your superpower is just you just want to be able to make chocolate? And then Honey over here on the left, she's like, man, bitch, I'll just buy you some fucking chocolate. What a lame ass idea.
What flavor do you want right now?
I can make for you.
And Minji's just like, don't judge me, bitch. She just wants that motherfucking chocolate.
I'm not
Don't
judging you. I'm
judge
just
me.
saying.
It's my superpower, guys.
이게 무슨
무술봉이야?
like wand. Yeah, that's what I want. Like just 손에 막 지팡이 없어요? 네. 지팡이 있을 것 같은데. 두고 오세요.
Okay, this part, pay attention to what she put on that shelf there.
아니 근데 토핑같이 포함이 되게
Okay, pay attention to that. So that, okay. You notice they put this thing on the shelf. It's a bunny stick. It's a glow stick, right? Basically, it's basically just a stick with a battery in it and a light and then like a bunny head on top. Now, this is a thing with K-pop is like a lot of what they'll do is they'll sell these things to their fans because what fans will do is they'll buy this shit up so that when they go to the concerts, they all have these glowy things to show their support. So this is a picture of an actual New Jeans concert. By the way, there's a fuck ton of people. For those of you who don't know, K-pop is the most popular form of music in the world. And all you like Lynyrd Skynyrd and AC/DC and whatever old white people music fans, suck my fucking dick. K-pop's already won. It's the best. Now look at all these people in the crowds with the bunny sticks, right? In this video, okay, so basically this is what K-pop groups do. They each have their own personalized stick. Now for New Jeans, it's bunnies, because if you're a New Jeans fans, you're called a bunny. That's the nickname for New Jeans fans. You're bunnies. So whenever New Jeans are on a live stream or whatever, they'll say, "Hey bunnies." That's the mascot for If you are a bunny, that means you're a hardcore New Jeans fan, right? So that bunny stick in the video, think of that as a stand-in for their entire fandom, right? That's what the bunny means. That's the significance of the bunny, and pay attention to that as this video proceeds, because it's going to be very important. And then bam, and now the video starts.
초콜릿을 만들어내는
크기
능력.
A bit like a healer.
파워를 줄
나는
수 있는
슈퍼파워?
Look at sun, new me, switched it up, move this, booty brown, new jeans, so fresh, so clean.
Okay, so think back on this. So when the Powerpuff Girls show up, right, the video starts, they get blasted with that buddy stick light. This here represents the other side. This represents the Nirmanakaya realm, the spirit world, right? While the girls in New Jeans, they are the physical realm, right? And then you have the focal point of the bunnies, and now we're in the spiritual realm, right? And in the spiritual realm, what are they doing? They're looking out into the materialistic world, the physical world, right? And so this shot here, imagine this is the spirit world looking out into our world, right? Minji's over there talking. She represents the physical material world. And this is going to be the spirit world's point of view looking at our world.
초콜릿을 만들어내는
크기
능력.
A bit like a healer.
파워를 줄 수
나는
있는
슈퍼파워?
Look at sun, new me, switched it up, move this, booty brown, new jeans, so fresh, so clean. I'm in love.
Look, she's actually building the chocolate that Minji was talking about. So they're picking up what the girls were talking about in the physical world. And now they're actually, in the spiritual side, they're actually working to manifest it. So you got a chocolate bunny. And they hit the screen. Now look at these screens here. Look at these shots here. Notice how the Powerpuff Girls, they went from 2D to 3D. And now you have this shot here where, it's the spirit. Okay, so originally, right, you had the other side of the veil, the spirit world looking out into our world. This is the opposite shot. This is the physical world looking into the spiritual realm. Like if we were looking out in the woods and we saw a portal, and you look into the portal and you see the other side. This is from our point of view, looking at them. This is them looking at us. And as these beings, they become more manifest. They go from 2D to 3D. Aspects of them start bleeding into our world to be perceived by those who are psychically open enough to allow them into our solipsistic subjective perceptions. And in that way, the spiritual world bleeds into our reality. See, all of these shots are showing you that in this case, right, you have the screen capture where you have to confirm by clicking on all the New Jeans squares, and then Powerpuff Girls show up, and then you're now in this limbo state where who is the real New Jeans? Are these New Jeans the girls, or are they the spirit forms, i.e. the Powerpuff Girls? Let's watch that again. There's a lot going on here, guys.
You wear new tee, new jeans, do you see? You wear
They're bleeding into our world. They're starting to manifest. Now this part is significant. Make you feel like a game, right? Because that has always been my idea, the reason why I've been obsessed with the paranormal. Because these girls, right, they're just picking up their phones. They're about to have a good time, right? And what are they doing with these phones? They're playing a game, right? And this is a shot of them from the point of view of the game itself being played by the girls. Because I've always been of the notion, the reason why I've always been obsessed with the paranormal is because to me, if everything in paranormal, what it implies is true, then that is proof positive that we are indeed characters in a video game. And I think that's the point that this video is trying to make. Because what is the video game? The video game is this physical, material world that we're trapped in, right? The video game is that us having our own solipsistic, self-contained perceptual worldview has to marry that with this objective reality that we're all tied into all at once. How well or how poorly we tie into that objective, common, shared reality between everyone else that shares this physical world with us, that's part of the game that we play. People who have gone insane or who have succumbed to like drug addiction, who are probably homeless and who are probably not able to even function, those are people who have lost that game, right? The paranormal realm interfaces with what? Does it interface with our objective material reality? No. Because if it did, that's what disclosure is. That's what disclosure is. Because if when disclosure happens, that means the paranormal side is now accepted into the physical material shared worldview. But disclosure hasn't happened yet. It only manifests to individuals, and it manifests to people personally. See, the idea is a house haunted if there's no actual person in there to perceive any ghosts? I say no. There could be ghosts in the house, but it doesn't matter. If there's no one around to perceive the ghosts, then those ghosts might as well just not exist at all. It doesn't matter if they exist or not. As soon as you have people in there, physical people who are able to perceive said ghosts, that's when the house is haunted. See, the ghosts need the people to perceive them just as much as the people need to be able to see them in order to interface with them. That is, to me, the nature of the paranormal, and that is the truth that is being presented to you guys by New Jeans. Let us continue.
Make it feel like a game. Look at us, we go on and on again. We'll go on to the end. What we wanna do on and on again. Make it feel like a game.
See, they're in the video game now, and they're breaking out.
We'll go on to the end. What we wanna do on and on again. Look at the new me, switched it up. Who's this? Did I buy new jeans? So fresh, so clean.
And now they're facing off against the kaiju, right? The spirit realm, the Tulpas created by the girls of New Jeans are now facing off against their greatest rival, the nexus into the material world. What is the true nexus for these Tulpas to break into the physical world? It is the bunny. And what did I mention the bunny represented earlier? The bunny is the New Jean fandom. It is you and me, fellow New Jeans fans. It is the people who are watching this video. It is these people attending the concerts. These are the ones that are manifest, that are actually the focal point, the nexus point. They're the portals, the living portals by which these Tulpa entities are able to cross into our physical world. So now these girls have to do battle with it. And look, they're being rendered in real time because they're being actualized. It's spirit being made physical, physical being made real, right? It's the struggle for actualization, right? Like I said with the haunted house example, the person has to be there to perceive the ghost in order for the house to be haunted. If there is no ghost, if there's nothing, no perceiver, then ghost being there or not being there does not matter, right? Just like we are the focal point for that ghost being made manifest into this physical world, because the ghost needs to be perceived in order to be manifest. That bunny represents the fans, the New Jeans fans, their devoted fandom, who are actually bringing to life the spiritual entities known as the Powerpuff Girls.
You and me, you wear new tee, new jeans, you and me, you wear new tee, new jeans.
And finally, the final shot here. Hold on. You see this room? Right now it's got all this New Jeans stuff. It's got bunny stuff. It's got Powerpuff Girl stuff. These girls, these spiritual entities have finally made it over, crossed over into our physical realm through the focal point that was the bunny, i.e. us, the perceivers. That is the point of this video.
와, 뭐야? 진짜 이거 할수 있어. 그러니까.
There's Minji, Honey. Honey's actually Vietnamese. Danielle, she's actually half Korean, half Australian. There's Hain. So yeah, guys, I hope you can see the profound truth that K-pop brings, the spiritual truths, right? And let me fix this camera back up here. Okay. So I've meditated very deeply upon this video, and I've wondered a couple of things here, because at first I thought it was the New Jeans girls through their fans manifesting the Powerpuff Girls. That's what I thought at first, until recently I came upon a different interpretation of this video. It has a similar spiritual truth, but here's what I'm coming to conclude. It's not that the Powerpuff Girls are the Tulpas. No. I think the real point of this video is that in actuality, New Jeans, the girls themselves, they're the Tulpas. The ones manifesting the Tulpas, the ones bringing the breathing the Tulpas into life, it's the bunnies. It's the New Jeans fans. It's people like you and me who love New Jeans and their music and their whimsical ways. We are the ones that are manifesting these girls. These are the true Tulpas, and it's the Powerpuff Girls who are the vehicles by which these Tulpas manifest into our realities. I don't know. It's one of those things that I've been really meditating on. This is such a deep video. So, I don't know. I'm still struggling with it. Guys, share with me like your interpretations or what are your thoughts? Because that's the idea of what the paranormal really is. And that's the true lesson that New Jeans has taught us. The true lesson being this. If a bear shits in the woods, then does Bigfoot truly exist? Think about it, guys. And yeah, share with me some of your thoughts in the comments. I'd be interested in hearing. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this made a little bit more sense to you, and maybe clarified some of the mysteries of the paranormal phenomena. And bear in mind that this mystery can only be enlightened through K-pop. Yes, folks. K-pop is the truth. And Western music blows. Good night, folks.